It is December 8th, 2025, and time for another episode of GrokTALK, brought to you by GraniteGrok.com and Grok Media LLC. Make sure you check out GraniteGrok.com, and while you're there, look for opportunities in the sidebar to follow us on Facebook and on X. We're also on Rumble. We would love it if you would just like, follow, thumbs up, whatever, every chance you get, so that we can grow our audience on those platforms. So today, I was inspired. It's odd. I've told the story, I think, maybe not on this platform, but to people in public and everything else. You know, how do you come up with so much content? I produce like about a third of all the content on GraniteGrok.com myself. Plus I do a Substack, plus I do the daily update, plus I do this. And I just, some days you just get up and you look at the world and everything's a story, and you just, it's like great. It just comes right out of you. I don't know, maybe you don't have to like what comes out, but it does. And it's easy. And then other days it's like trying to milk a bull. Those days are few and far between, but you know, sometimes you get up and you look at stories, even low hanging fruit, and you're like, I got nothing. So that's kind of how it happens. Well, today, actually earlier this week, I clicked on an article over at Vermont Digger. The headline was "A Costly Unforced Error. Vermont Legislature's Top Economist Slams Trump Trade War." Tom Cavett was speaking to members of the Vermont House and Senate at a briefing Wednesday in Montpelier on some of the major issues legislators will face when they reconvene for the 2026 legislative session. He says that Donald Trump's trade war with Canada and his disparaging marks is a costly, unforced error. I'm like, this is Vermont. You can't even begin to list every single costly, forced error that legislature, especially when they had Democrat supermajorities, has pushed on the people of Vermont. Exponentially expensive, irresponsible, just bad policy. Some of it you can't even make work. It's so bad. So I've invited Rob Roper, who's from Vermont, his long career in politics there, and he's going to join me to talk about some forced and unforced errors that the top economist and the guy who consults with the legislature really should have considered before he blamed Trump for creating tax problems with tariff policy that will eventually, very likely, make the cost of living and life in America great again. Grok Talk returns in less than 60 seconds. Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteGrok.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Grok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you. All right, my guest today is Rob Roper. He is a freelance writer covering politics and policy for the Vermont State House. In his online publication Behind the Lines, which is over on Substack, you should go over there and subscribe right away. You can also read him on GraniteGrok.com for the better part of the last 2.5 years now. So we have a good archive of his content. Rob has over 20 years of experience with Vermont politics, serving as president of the Ethan Allen Institute from 2012 to 2022, as a past chairman of the Vermont Republican State Committee, which had to be a heck of a job to have in the state of Vermont, and over at True North Radio, Common Sense Radio, WDEV, and on statewide political campaigns with grassroots policy organizations. Rob, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right, so I already gave you the lead in. Tom Cavett says Trump made an unforced error and it's going to cost taxpayers in Vermont because you have a decline in tourism, which we can talk about. It's really not as big as they let on over at Vermont Digger, but it's Vermont Digger. So what are you going to do? But anyway, you recently wrote a post, very timely, about a long list of things that are forced errors by the legislature. And I just thought, as a contrast, we ought to talk about that, since I think Tom ought to know about all of those.
Yeah, I mean, you can argue about whether the tariffs were an unforced error or not, um, but you make the very good point, Steve, that Vermont has so many unforced errors in terms of taking dings to our economy. I mean, it was not a forced error that we adopted all of these green policies, uh, going back to the Global Warming Solutions Act and its spawn children, the clean heat standard, the renewable energy standard. These are all things that are driving. Well, the clean heat standard is still in limbo, but the renewable energy standard is going to drive up our electric bills by somewhere between a half a billion and $1 billion over the next 10 years. That's an unforced error. Healthcare, which is the big one. I mean, we've seen Vermont is now spending 20% of our state domestic product on healthcare costs, where the national average is 8%. 8% is a lot, but 20%, more than twice the national average for what we're spending on healthcare. And that's a series of unforced errors, taking a ding to the affordability of our state. Going back to the guaranteed issue community rating of Howard Dean back in the mid 1990s, to Catamount Healthcare, which was designed to try to fix that, to Green Mountain Healthcare, which was designed to fix that. That was a single payer that failed, but we're still left. I mean, that's still on the books. People say, "Oh, well, single payer healthcare failed." It's sort of like the clean heat standard. They put the law in place. They never repealed it. It's still there. We still get the Green Mountain Care Board from that, which has not to date done a very effective job of reining in healthcare costs. Um, and then the latest we had One Care and the expansion of Medicaid under Obamacare. All these things were choices that the Vermont legislature made that ultimately made it much more expensive to live here. Um, Housing, we've got a housing crisis in Vermont. Act 250 is an unforced error, driving up which is a lot of it's driven by the same green policies as the energy policy. It makes it impossible to build anything, so that shrinks the amount of supply that we have. There's increasing demand, and therefore housing prices go up. All these things can be fixed through the regulatory process and the tax structure, and we'll see if they do it. I hope, but doubt.
You're going to need a Republican majority for that. I saw a couple other things. Did they created a DMV fee that the DMV didn't even need?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was back in 2024. They raised DMV prices in Vermont, for the fee to register your vehicle, to get a driver's license, all those things, increased 20%. And when they were putting that bill through, the Secretary of Transportation said, we do not need that money to run the office. So, but they did it for giggles, because we hadn't done it in a while. It's like,
Okay. Okay. I wrote down a couple other things. Obviously, healthcare. I know you said it went from like 2 billion to 10 billion or so. Some obscene number is terrible. You covered Act 250. You guys got issues with education property taxes is a huge problem. And then I also made a note because I looked it up. Illegal aliens and sanctuary policy. Somebody, and I lost the link. I'm gonna have to go find it. But they estimated the number of illegals currently in Vermont, and the cost per illegal alien adds up to about $120 million a year.
oh wow, I haven't seen that study. I'd love to see it.
I will send it to you. So it seems to me, what else are we missing? What else have they done recently that's either a forced or unforced error?
Well, you brought up the education property tax, and that's going to be a huge one because we've just found out that we can expect our property tax increase next year for it'll hit in July 2026, but for FY 27, it's going to be 12%, another double-digit increase in the property tax. Following a couple years ago, we had the 14% statewide average tax increase for education property taxes, and over the last 5 years, we've had a 41% increase in our property tax rates across the state. That's the average. I mean, I said, a couple of years ago, in 2024, we had a statewide average of 14% increase, but some towns had as almost 40% year over year increase in their property tax. And we already have the highest property taxes in the nation. It's not like you're going from, $100 to $140 in property taxes. More likely is you're going from $10,000 to $14,000 for a lot of people in many cases in terms of what their property tax increase looked like in those communities. So it's really a powerful hit that people are taking. And it goes back to Act 60 20 years ago. Since they implemented Act 60, which was supposed to make everything more equitable, we've seen the cost and cost and cost of education go up. And for the last decade, decade and a half, we've seen the quality of our education decline. I mean, we are now worse than Mississippi in terms of our National Assessment of Educational Progress testing scores. Worse than Mississippi, tied with Louisiana. And we used to be top five. And so the costs are going up. The number of students in our state is declined by about 20% over the last quarter century. So you used to have about 106,000 students in Vermont before Act 60, and now we're down to roughly around 80,000. I think it's actually a little less than 80,000 now. So it's costing us more and more money to educate fewer and fewer students. It makes absolutely no sense, and we're getting worse results.
Yeah, we have a similar problem over here, and of course, we have the Claremont decisions and the Convale decision, and it is all coming to a head. There is a movement within the legislature to have a property tax cap. There are constitutional concerns about the way an amendment was rewritten in our Constitution back in 1968 that pretty much made it impossible for the legislature to fund education at all. So we're going to be talking about that at some point. And a whole bunch of people are just being very active about this whole process of property taxes funding an education hole that you can't seem to fill. And that, we've been writing about systems and buildings. That's what they're funding. They're not funding teachers and learning. And I think that, Vermont's in the same boat. We're not much better. We spend an awful lot of money on that. And so we have our share of forced and unforced errors over here. But again, I've been using Vermont as an example because this acceleration of decline, if you can actually say it that way, seems like it just getting worse in the last 10 years. I mean, it's amazing. I use it as like a poster child. All our Democrats want the exact same thing you guys have. And I'm like, but look at what they're doing. See what's happening. It's not working.
Why would you want this? I mean, this is like the worst of every possible world. Yeah, I mean, you guys in New Hampshire have high property taxes too. We're actually higher than you now. But you guys rely entirely on the property tax. Not entirely, but that is your main source of state income, and you got to have something to run the state. We have all of it. I mean, we have high income taxes. I think we have the second or third highest marginal income tax rate in the country. We have a 6% 6% sales tax, which is on the higher end of sales tax. I mean, we've got the whole thing, and we're still doing the property taxes. It's crazy.
Well, we just eliminated our interest and dividends tax, which is a
Yes, I
tax
know. I
that,
know.
yeah,
I buy that enviously.
we've been lowering business taxes every year. We just got rid of vehicle inspections. So we're pushing hard to save people a couple bucks here and there. And, maybe lightning will strike and something strange will happen. But um, I weep for Vermont because I have friends who grew up there and it was a beautiful state many, many years ago. It still is very beautiful. And unless, of course, they get their way and put solar panels and wind farms all over it. But yeah, I would say that Mr. Cavitt's got some issues with unforced and forced errors if he's concerned about the economics and in Vermont.
Yeah, no, he certainly is. I mean, he's not 100% wrong about the tariffs having an impact on Vermont. I know that, speaking to people in Burlington and particularly up in the Burke Mountain area and the Jay Peak area, that tourism from Canada is an important part of their economy and it's down. Um, so, yeah, you can look at the Trump administration and say, hey, you really screwed us on this one. Um, but we've also screwed ourselves over and over and over again, as you're right to point out.
Well, like I said, I think that there's a bigger picture on the tariff side, and eventually things could very well improve for everybody in America economically if they can go the way they are. The Supreme Court could flip this all on its head in the spring, but um, I think there's a long range possibility of benefit there, whereas what the Democrats have been doing in Vermont doesn't appear to have any upside.
No, there's no upside to anything that they're doing. I mean, they've screwed up our healthcare system. They've screwed up our housing situation. They've screwed up our education system. They've screwed up our power generation. Yeah, and they're like sort of like leaving the roads and bridges to crumble because they're using the money for all this other stuff. So, So we really do need a major turnaround in 2026 at the ballot box if we're gonna save the state.
Well, I think that's a problem for everybody. Everybody's leery. It's a midterm election. Those don't always go very well for us. And, well, you never know. Things could be different this time. The economy could take a big swing in the right direction, and people would be like, hey, okay, I kind of like this. All right, Rob, thank you very much for your time. I know you have more work to do, so I'm going to let you go. And you have a great day.
You too, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
All right, thank you.